Shalom. First and foremost, I want to start by giving all the praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rechak, Wadash. Double honors to the elder apostles and bishops of the great millstone who rule well. Peace, blessings, and salutations to the hopeful elect tabernacle of David, scattered abroad throughout the four corners of the earth. And our Lord willing, you brothers and you few sisters are having a blessed and spiritual Yom Kippur. And, here it is, that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to have a spiritual, humbling Day of Atonement. And then you got to have a joker that got to come out of the woodworks, and try to offset the spirit, but you can't offset the spirit. All right. Now I'm responding to the lesson that the elder apostle Gabar did, responding to I don't know who this individual is. I don't know if they're new to the faith, if they're part of another congregation, who knows, but he basically made an erroneous comment in response to the elder apostle Gabar, I guess one of the videos that he did, because we're in the time of the Day of Atonement, which is a fast. And this individual comes on basically saying that we're no longer obligated to this particular day. So, that's erroneous, because if you're going to make that statement, and I don't know what your premise is, I guess it's because, Yahushai being the ultimate atonement for Israel, he was our reconciliation, to the Most High through his sacrifice. We no longer have to sacrifice, etc. Well, by that logic or by that argument, then don't keep the Passover either, which I believe the elder apostle Gabar stated that in this video. Don't keep the Passover, because the Lord, he was also our Passover as well. He was the lamb without blemish. He was the scapegoat. He took on all of our sins, and he bore our iniquities, and it was all nailed to the cross. So we're not to keep the Passover. Well, let's go real quick. I'm going to go here to 1 Corinthians 11. And this is Apostle Paul speaking about the Lord's Supper, which was the Passover. 1 Corinthians 11 and 23 says, "For I have received of the Lord that which also I delivered unto you." So this is Apostle Paul saying that the revelations, the instructions, the ordinances that he received of the Lord when he supped with them. This is what he's sharing with the church. It says that the Lord Yahushai, the same night in which he was betrayed, took bread, and when he had asked, and when he had given thanks, he brake it and said, "Take, eat, this is my body, which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me." Right? So this was to be a ritual that his disciples and his followers, those that believe, they would perform in remembrance of the Messiah. And we know that it's spiritual because, bread also represents parabolically or symbolically, it represents the knowledge, it represents the wisdom contained in the scriptures, the law, the prophets, the Psalms. All right, that's why the Lord referred to the book as a roll when he told Ezekiel to, eat the whole roll and then go to my people. Yahushai comes in a volume of that roll, that book. So when we take the bread and we eat it, we're to eat it as a ritual in remembrance of the Lord, right? It also represents the Lord establishing a New Testament, which we're not in the new covenant yet. Okay. But this is just a reminder. It says After the same manner also he took the cup, and when he had supped, saying, This cup is the New Testament in my blood. This do ye as often as you drink it in remembrance of me. So Yahushua was sharing this with them, saying that basically you're to continue with this even after I depart. After my departure, they were to still keep this ritual. All right. So if you're not in Yahushua, then it would make sense why you would think that you're no longer obligated. All right. It says, for as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, do shew the Lord's death till he come. And Yahushua hasn't returned yet. So we're to continue to do this in remembrance of not only the Lord's death and resurrection, but also this is a reminder that the Lord's he's gonna show up as a fulfillment of all the words spoken by the law and the prophets. All right. So we have to continue the tradition. We have to continue this ritual. I'm gonna read it again, verse 26. It says, for as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you do shew the Lord's death till he come. So this is an instruction. We do this until the Lord returns. So even though the Lord already died and resurrected and ascended back to the heavens, sitting on the right hand of the Lord, the Most High, we're still to do this until he returns, in remembrance of his sacrifice, in remembrance of what he had to go through. All right. Him being the ultimate lamb without blemish. He's the Passover. So we do this in remembrance of him. All right. Which is still to be solemn, serious, is to be holy. It says, wherefore, whosoever shall eat this bread and drink this cup of the Lord unworthily shall be guilty of the body and blood of the Lord. But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of that bread and drink of that cup. Because you will be guilty of the body if you partake of this, but then you fall away. You go back into the world. All right. You continue to willfully sin and basically go back to the old man, the old way. Is pretty much as if you took Yahushua's sacrifice as a light thing, like as if it wasn't precious, and you're going to be guilty of his blood. So we often do this ritual to remind ourselves that, hey, stay on the right path. Don't let the Lord down. He's going to come back. He's going to return. He's going to come back in the cloud. He's going to resurrect those who died in the Lord. He's going to give us glory. Okay. So it says, but let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of that bread and drink of that cup. For he that eateth and drinketh unworthily eateth and drinketh damnation to himself, not discerning the Lord's body. And that's for anybody that take this truth for granted, that's not taking this thing seriously. Okay, so we're to continue to this tradition. We're 2,000 years later, and we're still keeping this ritual. The Lord has not returned yet. So the same logic can be applied for the Day of Atonement as well, because we know the Day of Atonement is a day that you afflict yourself as an act of humility to the Lord. Why wouldn't you want to, show that determination to the Lord and show that transparency? Why wouldn't you want to humble your soul before him, especially knowing that, we're in these filthy bodies, man, given the nature of this wicked flesh. You're going to at least one time out of the year show that to the Lord. So to show you that they still continue to keep the Day of Atonement, even after the Lord died, resurrected, and ascended, let's go to Acts 27, where Apostle Paul, in the midst of his ministry, he was catching hell. They actually still was keeping the Day of Atonement then. Let me go to the AMP translation. I'm going to start at verse 3. The point is at verse 9. And it says, the next day we landed at Zidon, and Julius, treating Paul with thoughtful consideration, allowed him to go to his friends there and be cared for and refreshed. From there we put out to sea and sailed to the leeward sheltered side of Cyprus for protection from weather, because the winds were against us. It was real gusty, gusty and dangerous. It says, when he had sailed across the sea along the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, and imagine, you on a boat in the middle of the seas with all these gusty winds, and you don't know if a hurricane is getting ready to flare up. That's a scary thing. But these were the type of conditions that Paul had to, he had to endure, showing his dedication. It says, we landed at Myra in Lycia on the south coast of Asia Minor. There the centurion Julius found an Alexandrian ship, a grain ship of the Roman fleet, sailing for Italy, and he put us aboard it. For a number of days we sailed slowly and arrived with difficulty off Cnidus. Then, because the wind did not allow us to go farther, we sailed under the leeward sheltered side of Crete, off Salmon, and hugging the shore with difficulty, we came to a place called Fair Heavens, near the city of Lasea on the south side of Crete. Now much time had been lost, and navigation was dangerous, because even the time for the fast, Day of Atonement, in parentheses, that's the fast that this passage is alluding to. All right, the fast of the Day of Atonement was already over. So Paul began to strongly warn them, saying, men, I sense after careful thought and observation that this voyage will certainly be a disaster, and with great loss, not only of the cargo and of the ship, but also of our lives, showing you that, Paul, he was a man of wisdom. He was prudent. He could sense that, danger was ahead. So, it wasn't best to, stay on the ship. Okay. So this right here, the point is in verse 9, indicates that, moments before they boarded these ships on this journey, they had went through a Day of Atonement. So here they are. There's an account, decades later, after Yahushua's death and resurrection and ascension, that they were still holding the Day of Atonement. So if we were not still obligated to keep the Day of Atonement, then why do we have this account? Why were they still keeping the fast if it wasn't necessary? So the individual that made that statement, he's unlearned. All right. You're speaking out of ignorance, and you need to learn again. You need one to teach you again. Okay. We're not above afflicting our souls, man. We're still in this flesh and still need to be redeemed. We're not out of these bodies yet, but that's the earnest desire, is to shed these bodies, man. That weighs us down in iniquity, man. If it wasn't for Yahushua's sacrifice and the grace that came with that, we would have been done. So, we needed, something expiatory. All right, something expiatory. And even though Yahushua's sacrifice is enough, but we still continue to do this, all right, as a tradition, just as we keep the Passover. It's much needed. We're still rehearsing the righteous acts. Going back to the book of Judges. It's to show, that gratitude and dedication and our faith. All right. It's all part of the faith, man. So I want to demonstrate one more example, right? Because you had during the time of the Maccabees, right, when you had Judas and his brothers, and they defeated the Greeks, and they was able to rededicate the temple and clean out the altar, and they had a celebration where they had a dedication of the altar for 8 days. And it was Judas and his brethren that made the declaration that we should keep it year to year. And you go back to Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, where it gives us the high holy days that the Lord gave us. That we didn't start keeping the Feast of Dedication until after the rededication of the temple. So that became a new high holy day that we kept throughout our years. All right. And guess what? Yahushua was actually seen. He was on the scene during the time of the Feast of Dedication when he came into the temple. Let's go to John 10. So here it is in the Lord's time. This is nearly 200 years after the fact, because the Maccabees brothers, it was around 165, 167 BC, when they actually did that. So this is nearly 200 years later, and they're still keeping the same feast. They're keeping the same tradition. So this is John 10 and 22. And it says, and it was at Jerusalem, the Feast of Dedication, and it was winter, and Yahushua walked in the temple in Solomon's porch. So here it is, Yahushua makes his appearance, at the temple during the Feast of Dedication. What feast is this talking about? When you go to the NLT translation, it tells you, John 10 and 22 in the NLT. It says, it was now winter, and Yahushua was in Jerusalem at the time of Hanukkah, the festival of dedication. So like I said, this is almost 200 years later, and they're keeping this feast. They're keeping the same feast, and this was just something that the Judas Maccabees and his brothers made a declaration for. And it wasn't like it was said that the Lord commanded that, all of Israel should keep this feast throughout your generations forever. But you see, hundreds of years later, Yahushua is at the feast. So are you telling me that this isn't obligatory either? We shouldn't keep Hanukkah. So what's next? Don't keep none of the high holy days? You're going to end up sounding like a Christian. Because the Christian, they'll keep Easter before they keep the Passover. They'll keep Thanksgiving before they'll keep Hanukkah. So I'm just saying. And let me go right here to prove that this is talking about that particular feast. Going back to the time of the Maccabees. The word is
Strong's G 1456. Ekainia.
Enkania, going back to the Hebrew, Hanukkah, right? It means dedication, consecration. In particular, the annual feast celebrated 8 days beginning in the 25th of Chislev middle of our December. Some sources say November. I'll say towards November. It says instituted by Judas Maccabees 164 BC in memory of the cleansing of the temple from the pollution of Antiochus Epiphanes IV. So we still keep this feast even to this very day. If you can, because we're in our the land of our captivity. Back then when we had our sovereignty and we didn't have to go to work every day except the the weekends or whatnot. So we was able in our land to keep this feast for 8 days. So we would eat, drink, be merry in celebration of the rededication of the temple, which the temple has since then, it was in ruins. With Yahushua's death, we know that the temple had rent, and that was just to symbolize that the Lord wasn't going to be dealing with a physical temple anymore, but that the temple was going to be us. All right, and that we had access to the Holy of Holies through Yahushua, making us a priest after the order of Melchizedek. So, by this dude's logic, they wasn't obligated to keep the feast of dedication, Hanukkah. Well, here it is. You see the Lord; He was present. Why is he celebrating that? So, some of you dudes, man, y'all gotta hold your peace. If you don't know what you're talking about, just as the scriptures say, even a fool, when he holds his tongue, is found wise. You don't know what you're talking about. So, this is just my response, and the Lord willing, this was edifying. I'm gonna give all praise to Yahweh Shem Yahushai, and until the next one, Shalom.